There are people out there within the Access media trying to spin Assassin's Creed Shadows to be some type of success for Ubisoft, despite the evidence that we now have to the contrary, suggesting that they did not sell nearly enough copies in order for it to be profitable. Now, this isn't to say if you're one of the people who got this game and enjoyed it that you're not allowed to enjoy it. I'm not saying that at all. You're allowed to enjoy whatever games you want to enjoy. Don't let me tell you otherwise. What I'm talking about is from a business standpoint, was this game financially successful for Ubisoft? And no, it looks like it didn't sell nearly enough copies in order for it to be successful for the company, but you're still getting media outlets like this article from Game Rant right here, trying to spin it and use some cherry pick stats in order to make it seem like it's a lot better than what it is. But when you look at past the stats that they're given, you can see that things were a lot worse than what they're presenting. Assassin's Creed Shadows has been a big hit for Ubisoft. Assassin's Creed Shadows has turned into a massive success for Ubisoft, registering day one sales numbers that nearly top the list of the games in the action adventure franchise. According to newly released information, only one game in the series has sold more copies than Assassin's Creed Shadows by its launch date. And what they're talking about is Assassin's Creed Valhalla. So they're saying that on day one of sales, this has sold more than every other Assassin's Creed game except for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Okay, I mean, that's obviously a good statistics. I mean, if it was sold worse than every other one, then clearly that's something troubling. But when you're saying it sold better than all of them except for one, then on the surface, that could sound good unless you actually look past it and see what that really does entail. It has been nearly 8 weeks since the official release of Assassin's Creed Shadows on March 20th. The 14th mainline game in the franchise has already done a lot to stand out from the rest of the pack with its feudal Japan setting and dual protagonists, and it has garnered generally favorable reviews from professional critics. Mind you, professional critics' reviews ultimately don't matter because they're not the ones actually buying copies of the game. It's the audience that they really need to concern themselves with. And from what we've seen, audience scores for this game have generally not been very good for it. They're trying to say like, oh, it's just review bombing and other things like that. It's like, yes, we hear that all the time whenever a main line game like this does terribly, but does it ever stop to occur to some people that maybe people just gave it bad reviews because the game wasn't good? They're trying to say like, oh, millions of people played it on its release in the first week. Mind you, not millions of copies sold, just millions of people playing it. Maybe it's people played it and just didn't like it. One thing that I've noticed in regards to the trophies that we can see for this game, how many have actually been done. Out of the people who've played this game, 92% of them have completed the prologue for it. Okay. Around 73% have completed the first act of the game. And then you notice it drops to 39%, 36%, 36% have actually completed the epilogue, which means there's this huge drop off between the people who completed Act 1 of the game and Act 2 of the game. And since that's kind of consistent with the rest of it, it seems like from the people who actually started playing this game, only around a third of them completed the game, which to me says that the people who played this game, 2/3 of them didn't really enjoy it. So I think it's fair to say that that kind of accounts to why you have negative audience scores. If a lot of people who picked up the game or decided to give the game a shot didn't like it enough to even complete the second act of the game. Those impressions apparently translate well into good early sales numbers. As a press release from Ubisoft states that only Assassin's Creed Valhalla outpaced Shadows in terms of launch day sales. Now, keep in mind, they're just talking about launch day sales. They're not talking about sales figures after that, just launch day. Now, think about this for a second, because they're saying it only was beaten out by Assassin's Creed Valhalla, but it had a higher launch number than every other game in the franchise outside of Valhalla. Okay, let's just examine what that could possibly mean for a second, because I'm not talking about this game. I'm just going to throw out like a hypothetical scenario, but like, let's say a game sells 100,000 copies on launch. And then there's another game that sells 150,000 copies at launch. You're like, okay, that game that sold 150,000 copies sold more day one copies than the other one. But what about if the one that sold 100,000 copies at launch went on and over the course of the next month sold an additional million copies? That's 1.1 million that they've sold during the first month. Now, let's say the game that sold 150,000 copies during the first day wasn't well received, and it only went on to sell an extra 200,000 copies during that first month, well, then you can see it's not selling as good as the other one that it had a better day one launch of. But if you're just going to talk about the day one launch, then you can present it as being a lot better off than what it actually was. Because according to the sales numbers that we do have for this game, it's not very good. There's this post that was going around on Reddit. They linked the sources of where they're getting their information on that. I'll leave a link to these sources right here in the description of the video if you want to check them out yourself. But just take a look at what they've reported here. PS5, 1.7 million copies sold since launch. That's been 2 months. PC, 367,000 copies sold on Steam in the first 2 weeks, after which sales plummeted so hard it became difficult for game analytics to gather accurate data. And the concurrent player count on Steam was a measure that a lot of people were pointing to and saying, like, it looks like this game's doing terrible. Some people were trying to say, like, oh no, it's also on other consoles. Maybe it has bigger sales numbers on other consoles. I've even granted that premise in the past, like, okay, yeah, but I don't know if it's going to be significantly more, but let's just assume that there is a higher player count on other consoles. Isn't enough to really make up the difference for how abysmal it looks on Steam. And according to this, not really. Xbox, no exact numbers, but it's the worst performing among the 3 platforms. So let's be generous and assume it matches PC, 367,000 copies sold. That brings a total of the 2.4 million copies sold across all platforms. To put that into perspective, Ghost of Tsushima sold that many copies in just 3 days, and it was a PlayStation exclusive. Even Assassin's Creed 1, a game from 18 years ago, sold 2.5 million copies in its first month. Ubisoft will post their earnings today in the next few hours. What do you think they're going to tell their investors to hide their massive flop of a game? What they're doing is saying, like, look at how good our day one sales numbers are. It beat everything else except for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Now, going back to that figure again, that's them trying to boast about their game and trying to talk it up and be like, oh, it's a lot better than what some people are trying to claim it is, or these are good sales figures if it beats all of our other games except for one game. But you have to keep in mind, the reported budget for Assassin's Creed Shadows was estimated to be around 250 to 350 million, but let's just say it's 250 million just to be generous towards Assassin's Creed Shadows. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, the budget for that game was 80 to 85 million dollars. So what they're basically saying is it outsold, it couldn't sell more copies on the day one release than a game that cost roughly a third of what it cost to produce Assassin's Creed Shadows. And then, mind you, they're not even going on to say how many it sold within the first couple months, or they're not boasting about, oh yeah, in the first month or two, it was able to sell more copies than Assassin's Creed Valhalla or any of these other games. They're just talking about the day one release. You would think that if they were able to actually sell more in the first couple months of their launch than those other titles, then they'd be talking about that one too, but they're not talking about that. They're just talking about the day one release, which leads me to believe that these numbers that they're reporting are worse than what those numbers were for those games. And that's probably why when they're doing their earnings call, a lot of people notice that the stock price for Ubisoft crashed even further. There's a lot of factors as to why the company is in a rough financial position. But one thing that I was saying, and a lot of other people were saying in the lead up to the release of Assassin's Creed Shadows, is that was a game that needed to hit it out of the park for them. It didn't just need, actually, it didn't even just need to be a home run. It needed to be a grand slam for them, because Ubisoft was in so much financial trouble before that game came out. That's why they had all those delays, trying to put on their extra polish and doing all they can in order to try to put their best foot forward with that game, because that was something that they need to have succeed as a company in order for them to stay afloat. After the game launched, we saw a slight uptick in their stock, but then it continued to go down, and it's gone down even further as time gone on, because the investors who are seeing the information that the company is putting out are not happy with what's been going on. So again, if you got this game and you enjoyed this game, I'm happy for you. You're allowed to enjoy it, but just know that the game was not a financial success for Ubisoft. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Does this information surprise you? Did you think that they actually had worse sales numbers than 2.5 million, or do you think it was better than that? And comment below, let me know. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest entertainment news. And don't forget to click that like button and share this video out there, because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.